sis. Appreciate that. What a great opportunity to come and speak before you today, and I really appreciate it. This has been an amazing experience so far, listening to the perspectives and the different ideas that we're hearing. It's just very inspirational, I have to say. I hope I can add a little bit to that. And my goal today is to tell, I guess, the rest of the story. But before I get there, I want to start out with a little bit of history. Again, my name is David, and I'm a child of the 70s, and I survived, which is a good thing. But looking back during those times, I, like many of us, had dreams and desires and goals to accomplish big things. There was a show that was on back then called Baa Black Sheep. I don't know if any of you ever heard of it or remember it, but it was about these fighter pilots, and they were out defending the flag and fighting World War II, and that was what I wanted to be. I was going to be a fighter pilot, and I could see myself in the cockpit of that plane, patrolling the Pacific Ocean, looking for enemy fighters. And I also have to admit there was another show, and I had a little bit of a crush on Wonder Woman back then as well. So I had some pretty big goals. Be a fighter pilot, marry Wonder Woman. Great. Those are pretty easy things. They're attainable, they're achievable. Well, fast forward 30 years, and I have to say I'm not here to talk about flying planes or being married to Wonder Woman, or at least having a crush on Wonder Woman. That's a whole other story. Things change, and we end up in our lives in places where, we really didn't expect to be. And just like those desires and goals that we had as youth, as we're young, and then life gets in the way and changes, so is it with our society. And we think about the things that are important to us, the things that we want. Things like safety, things like clean air, clean water, things like durability, things like predictability, things like economic prosperity. Those ideas of being able to preserve those and continue them going forward for our future generations, for our children, for my kids, for Jackson, Katie, and Harrison, for their kids, and for their kids. The idea of sustainability, the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, all those things are important. But yet, when we look at where we are today, we're not there. We haven't achieved what we see as a society, what the potential of society is. We have problems, we have poverty. We have poverty across the world in developing countries, obviously, but we have it right here, too, right here in Texas. We have water that's dirty. We have air that is dirty, that's hard to breathe. And this is something that really we shouldn't have. We have urban sprawl. We have decisions that have been made that have led to consequences that we're having to deal with now. And so obviously, like my desires when I was young and kind of where I am today, we're not kind of where we wanted to be, but yet there are opportunities to be able to do that. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. So we think about what we can do to solve these problems. Can we make our infrastructure last longer? Can we make it more durable? Can we make it more resistant to natural disasters and things like that? What if I came to you today to propose a material that was durable, that was strong, that was made from one of the most abundant minerals on Earth, didn't burn, didn't rust, didn't rot, and was activated by plain water? That sounds pretty good to be true, doesn't it? Well, what is that material? Drum roll, please. Concrete. Pretty exciting, huh? Not exactly like a fighter plane. Well, the question is why aren't we using more of it, and what are some of the perceptions behind the application of this product? And then how can we integrate this more into our society, into our infrastructure, into the things that we build? One of the challenges that we have, obviously, is the production process. And before I get into that, I'll talk about the difference. Most people interchange the word cement, concrete. Those are kind of the same words. You're walking on the cement sidewalk, walking on the concrete. There's a cement mixer driving down the road. Actually, there is a difference between those two. The cement is that gray powder that actually binds these other materials together. And the sand and the gravel goes in, the water goes in, and then you have basically what we're sitting on and standing on right here, concrete. And so the cement itself is actually the thing that people perceive, and likely, and rightfully so, that has a significant footprint. The manufacturing process required to generate and make cement consumes a lot of energy. But think about one thing. Concrete, when it's used in the world, behind water, is the most single utilized building material. So how do we bridge the gap between this material that is utilized all across the world? How do we improve the efficiency in how it's manufactured, and then even understand more how it's used. Well, one thing to think about is in the manufacture of cement, we got to get some of these most abundant minerals in Earth up to about 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. First of all, that requires a lot of limestone, a lot of material. So you see these big open areas where mining is done. And obviously the sand and the gravel that goes into concrete does the same thing. There's these big open areas that you have to excavate these materials. We've got to get them up to pretty high temperatures in order to create these new minerals. So it consumes fuel, and that actual change of limestone into these new minerals that are being manufactured chemically releases carbon dioxide. So we get the whole thought of the carbon footprint, and there certainly is that with the industry. This graph shows how cement ranks in all industrial sources in the United States. And a little surprisingly, it's not number 1 or not number 2, but even behind steel and even forest products, it's at number 8, even behind the food and beverage industry. It's not huge, but it's not insignificant either. And so we think about the manufacturing, and so what can be done in order to improve the way that it's manufactured? Well, there are things that are being done, and there are some statistics I'd like to share with the way of substituting some of these non-renewable fuels and non-renewable raw materials that actually go into the manufacture. So today, we look at that process, and a plant processes about 1.7 million tons, an average plant in the United States each year. So the more that we can replace those raw materials with other materials that are going to be going to a landfill, we can reduce and conserve those natural resources. Today, over 50% of facilities use some form of alternate raw material. Fuel, the other big input, a lot of energy is required. Over 70% of facilities use alternate fuels, alternates to the traditional coal and natural gas that are used in manufacturing this product. So what are some examples of that? Biosolids, switchgrass, renewable fuels, materials that have been destined to the landfill that otherwise are going to be taking up landfill space and existing for years. These happen to, in some cases, be renewable. They also happen to burn more efficiently and reduce the amount of CO2. And the technology that itself is using to manufacture is continuing to improve. And I'll say that over the last 40 years, to manufacture 1 pound of cement, the amount of energy required has actually gone down by over 37%. That's progress. It's not where it needs to be, and we know that there are more opportunities in the future. But this is an exciting thing to be a part of. So we think about the footprint. Is it a big footprint? Yeah, it's kind of a big footprint. But I think it's also important to look at the big picture and look at it from a different perspective, and that's also the rest of the story. And what I want to talk about is how concrete, that material that the cement goes into, is used and what it can do to help and improve our society. So there are 8 things that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to go through them fairly briefly, that are important things that help us to get to that place of sustainability. And number 1 is conserving resources. The use phase of concrete, the use phase of anything that's built, consumes more energy and has more environmental impact than the manufacturing and the placement of that. So any time a state or a municipality in designing infrastructure can make something that lasts longer, that's more durable, that's going to conserve resources. It's not only going to conserve financial resources, but it's going to conserve our resources as well. When you look at surveys that have been done, roads designed with concrete, stiffer pavement surfaces can actually last over 2 times as long as traditional flexible pavements. That's money in the pocket, but it's also a way to reduce congestion, waiting in traffic while that road is being restored and being rehabilitated. One example I'd like to share with you is out in California, west of Los Angeles. It's now I-10, but back in 1946, Route 66 was built. 67 years ago. This section was out of concrete. It's still being used and is still serving today. A testament to the long-term durability and the way that municipalities can save money. Another key element is the ability to live safely. We want to be safe. So what if we can build a structure that's going to be more sturdy and resistant to high winds like tornadoes and hurricanes and some other natural disasters, or thermally inert and have good insulation properties, doesn't burn to fires? Well, concrete can provide that. This is an example of the coast just down here off of Galveston back in 2008. Hurricane Ike, the surge literally washed away the shoreline. And this one home built out of concrete actually withstood that. It's important to be able to know that the dwellings that we live in are safe. The ability of concrete to resist fire because of its thermal mass and its structural stability is another incredible property of this material. And one example that I want to share is the Wine Cup Hotel, which is in downtown Atlanta. It was built about 100 years ago and was gutted by fire back in 1946. But because of the robust construction and the amount of concrete that was used in the structure, instead of collapsing or instead of having to be torn down, it was able to be rebuilt, and it today serves as the luxury Ellis Boutique Hotel, over 100 years old, and it's got many more decades ahead of it. Another key part of concrete is the ability to lower costs. And as I said before, the life phase, the use phase of the building, of the road, that has the bigger impact than actually the construction, the manufacturing and the construction. And so when we think about homes, and we think about how much energy goes into heating and cooling homes, when you look at building with concrete, studies have shown that between 8 and 11% less energy can be consumed over the life of that 30, 40, 50-year structure. That's a lot of money and it's a lot of energy. In fact, 70% of the electricity that's consumed in the United States comes from heating and cooling costs, 40% of the CO2 emissions. So if we can reduce that over the long term, it can have significant impacts. And it is not only for homes, but it's also for roads and pavement. One property of concrete pavement is rigidity, stiffness. How can it be more efficient to transfer the energy from the car and the axle to the tire to the road? And studies have shown that, again, over the use phase of the life of a road, a stiffer pavement can reduce the amount of fuel consumed. An MIT study released just this last month showed that a potential savings of over $15 billion in fuel costs can be achieved by using stiffer pavement. These are significant. Protecting communities. Another key thing that kind of ties in with safety, but it's a little bit of a broader perspective. We want to live in places that are safe. We want to be able to administer our cities in a way that allows buildings and structures to withstand disasters and withstand fire, withstand bad things that can happen in order to create economic vitality and economic prosperity. And obviously, constructing with concrete allows these buildings and allows these structures to be able to withstand some of the major shocks, and also provides communities with a sense of heritage because you have the continuity that these buildings and structures can create. This is an example of 90 West Street in downtown New York City, just right across from the World Trade Center. And it was built in 1907, and it served as office space until 2001 when the Twin Towers came down. Well, flaming debris came down from these towers and entered into this building as well as many other buildings. And a fire raged uncontrolled for 5 days in this building. But it stood, unlike number 7 World Trade Center, which actually received some of the same debris from the collapsing tower. It collapsed later that day. And the reason that this building was able to survive that was because of the concrete structure that reinforced it. And today, it's been meticulously preserved and continues to serve as a hotel in downtown New York, over 100 years old, and again, it will be there for many decades to come. Reduce waste. Obviously, this is a key part. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Those are the three key tenets of sustainability. First of all, reduce. Reduce how much you use. Reuse. Take something that you use and use it again. And then recycle. So when it reaches the end of that life, we want to basically find another use for it rather than having to throw it away. Concrete can do all these things. And I want to talk a little bit about that second phase. I talked about the reduce part. And obviously there's more to be done on the manufacturing side, reducing energy consumed and optimizing how concrete is mixed and how it's made. But how it's used is very adaptable, and it can be used in ways to help reduce waste. This image shows some of those properties. Because it's lighter color, this thermograph shows a road, contrasting with a darker color and a lighter color. We all have heard about the urban heat island effect, where you have dark surfaces that radiate that heat back out, and then you have higher ambient temperatures in certain areas. Lighter colored reflective surfaces can help lower those temperatures. And again, as I said before, over 70% of the electricity consumed is in heating and cooling. So if we can reduce that amount by lowering those ambient temperatures in some of these hot cities, especially here in Texas, we can do some pretty amazing things. Another example here is a paving difference in a parking lot. If you have a lighter colored pavement, you don't have to have as many lights to light it up. So that's one way of reducing waste in the form of energy. Another good example is water. We talk about wanting clean water. How can concrete help clean water? We have all these impervious surfaces, and when it rains, that washes contaminants into our lakes and our rivers and our streams. There's a product that is being developed, and it's been out for a while, called pervious concrete. And what this can do is you basically can drive on your retention pond. It allows water to percolate down into the soil and be cleaned naturally as opposed to running off and contaminating our rivers and our streams. And this application is being done in many, many places, more and more, the ability to help reduce waste through contaminated water. And then finally, once concrete gets done, when it's over, what happens? Does it go into a landfill? It can be reused. It can be crushed and screened. And this picture shows one of those projects at Stapleton Airport, where over 6.5 million tons of concrete that had been used in the airport for decades was recrushed and screened and used again. It can be used as a base under a foundation. It can be used as aggregate in new concrete and many other applications. Obviously, there's more to be done there as well. There's always opportunity and room for improvement, but there certainly is some major improvement that's being made. Long lasting, I talked about durability and how we want our infrastructure to last longer. And concrete certainly can help provide that. We have some examples here. The Pentagon is one example of a concrete building built in 1941. Miami City Hall, built in 1927, still standing. And not only in buildings, but also in other infrastructure. These are some examples. The Morris Shepherd Dam, which was built in 1938 to 1941, still is in use. And we can think of many other of these large structures that were built back during that time that are still in use today. The Rainbow Bridge in Idaho, which is the largest single-span concrete arch, beautiful bridge built in 1933, still in use today. And then my favorite example, this is a little bit older than that. This is the Pantheon in Rome. This is over 2,000 years old, freestanding dome structure, one of the longest and oldest concrete structures around. So obviously that's important. And then finally, beauty. Well, actually, number 7, beauty. We think about functionality. We think about all the things that are important for us in terms of having durable infrastructure. But it's also important to have beauty and aesthetically pleasing design. And concrete can certainly do that. These are some examples of the moldability and the versatility that this material can create to beautify the places that we live and the places that we work. You can recognize this place down under, the Australian Opera House down in Sydney, made out of concrete. You can even make some pretty awesome bridges out of this material. Architecturally, there is so much versatility in what it can achieve. And then finally, an example of a beautiful home that you can make. Again, complete versatility to do something that's aesthetically pleasing to us. And then finally, I think that one of the probably most important parts about concrete is connecting people. We all want to be connected, and we think about kind of the logical ways that this material can connect us to be able to drive and to be able to transfer goods and commerce and trade and get to the places that we go. But we also have to remember that it's more than just that. It's our community, it's our civic centers, it's our courthouses, it's our family, it's our homes, it's our places of employment, it's where we work, it's our offices, it's where we learn, it's our schools, it's our universities, it's our entertainment, it's our sports arenas and theaters. It creates all of these things that connect us together. And it's kind of interesting because it's at our very feet, and yet we really don't take notice of it too much. I'd like to end with an example of how this whole idea, and I think the concept of connecting people, comes into play. And this is one of the operations that we have down near Austin, and it's a sand and gravel facility that reached the end of its useful life. And we see here that there was this open pit, basically, where we were using sand and gravel. And at the end of that, we decided, what can we do with this? Well, it's 15 minutes from downtown Austin. It's over 2,100 acres. And we are in the process of redeveloping this along the Colorado River corridor into a new mixed-use, new urbanist development. It's called Rio de Vida. And basically what it is it's a walkable, green space community that takes what once was providing a vital material at the end of its useful life and is now going to become a part of society where people are going to be able to live and enjoy life for many decades to come. It's going to have a lot of green, open space. In fact, over 1,100 of those 2,100 acres are going to be walking in space, open spaceways. This is an opportunity and an example where we can create a sustainable and long-term solution and be able to take it all the way full circle and have it continue to connect us for many, many decades to come. And so I want to conclude with the fact that kind of the rest of the story, we think about how things are manufactured, and there's certainly opportunities to improve the efficiency, to reduce the amount of energy, to reduce the amount of resources that are used, and we're starting to make some progress on that. I'm excited to be able to be a part of this, and unlike being a pilot, I'm definitely not there, but I found a path to get to something that I had some passion for, and I'm able to make a difference, I believe, in this world, to improve how we do things. There's always going to be opportunities for improvement. There's always going to be opportunities for growth, but how you get there, it's the exciting part. And I'm thrilled to be able to be a part of that, and I think that there are many amazing things that we have in the future. And by the way, I actually did marry Wonder Woman. We have our 20th anniversary later this next month, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that as well. So things do turn out some ways how you expect them to. It's just the way you get there. It's a little bit different. Thank you so much for the opportunity.